I'm sitting here on a very chilly Eastern Cape morning under a somewhat clouded sky. Clouds we hope will bring us some more rain to this very dry and thirsty land. You'll remember that clouds have a deep significance in the scriptures. They almost always represent the presence of God. And in the book of Numbers, we read about what's in the midst of the story of the Israelites. And again, you'll remember them once being in captivity and moving towards the promised land. And in that time, they move around the wilderness. And Numbers 7 tells us a bit about what happens. It says, on the day the tabernacle, the tent of the covenant law, was set up, the cloud covered it. From evening till morning, the cloud above the tabernacle looked like fire. And that is how it continued to be. The cloud covered it, and at night it looked like fire. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. Whenever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped. At the Lord's command, the Israelites set out, and at his command, they encamped. And as long as the cloud stayed over the tabernacle, they remained in camp. And I think without stretching the analogy too much, it would be true to say that over these last 18 months, we have had a cloud over us. I think many of us feel the literal cloud over us. But it has had a sense of saying we can't move, we are stuck in this thing. And the cloud has settled and we have worshipped where we are. And for many of us, it's been in our homes, online. For some of us, it's been in person in our sanctuary. But I think that the latest news from the President, lifting the regulations, a little change in the numbers who can gather for worship from 50 to 250 changes the dynamic. So for us at Newton Park, where we could only have 40 to 50 people in church, now we've worked out our measurements, we can have 120 people in church. And that feels like it changes the game. It says to me that we must start thinking about moving on. It feels like the cloud has been lifted and God is calling us to move on. We really do worship a God who is never static. He's never stagnant. He never stays in one place. That's what I love about the Exodus story. It's the story of a God who is always calling his people to move on. And so I want to invite you and I want to challenge you today to say, perhaps we can start having our minds shift a little to see the cloud having been lifted and God calling his people to move on. We are so glad for the community of people who watch us online. We are so grateful for the people who are so faithful in watching online. I want to affirm the fact that online ministry is a new way of doing ministry for so many churches across the world. And I look forward to continuing that ministry in years to come. But it is time for us as a church to feel the cloud lifting and to begin to work and behave and think in a way that says there's not going to be one dramatic moment that the virus ends. We're wanting to get into new practices, new habits, new ways. And so I want to invite you back to worship. We can't invite everyone back as it used to be, but there's much more room now. And I want to invite you to return to worship. I don't want you to return out of guilt. I don't want you to return even out of obligation. Psalm 122 says, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. I was glad when they said, let's go to the house of the Lord. And so I want to invite you back to the house of the Lord, not out of obligation, not out of duty, not out of guilt, but come back because you are glad to be amongst God's people. If we need to, we'll look at expanding the number of services that there can be. But for now, it's one service, 8:30 on a Sunday morning, room for 120, and we hope that you will join us. And God bless you.